what we're going to do today is the program is actually called The Most Challenging Interview Question Ever, and how to answer it. And we experimented with this very same approach yesterday at mock interview practice. Every Thursday from 1:30 to 4:30, we do mock interview practice at the Workforce Solutions office. And so I thought, well, I'll just put Friday's program into practice, and we did it, and it had the intended effect. It drove the job seeker nuts. And so so this is going to be good. But before we get into that, we're going to do a related exercise. So here's the related exercise. We're just going to spend 10 minutes on this. And some of you may have done this before, especially some of you who've returned after a long absence, because this was something that was this exercise originated in Launchpad Job Club, and now other groups do it too. But it's very cool. So I hope that if you've done it before, you have forgotten it. So what we're going to do is we have 4 volunteers: Brett Taliaferro, our AV guy; Ken McElroy, mechanical engineer. We have Cheryl Cheatham, who is our kitchen diva and an accountant. She's one of them. And Dennis Sneed, member of our board of directors and financial guru. And so each of these people has a pocket full of paper clips. It is your objective, each one of you in this room, to try to see if you can get as many of those paper clips as possible during the next 10 minutes. Now, here's the deal. You cannot touch these people. So nobody can beat them into submission. Nobody can pick their pockets. You have to try to get them. You have to try to cajole them. You need to try to persuade them. They are not allowed to speak. So you can go from person to person to person, back to other people that you've tried to get them before. But you're going to try to get as many of these paper clips as possible. Does everybody understand the assignment? All right. The clock has started now. Ken McElroy has no more paper clips, so he's out of it. You'll have to try to get clips from the other 3. Cheryl Cheatham is out of paper clips. You'll have to concentrate on the other two. Okay, let me see. Is there anybody in this room who got more than one? Stevie, how many did you get? 3? Anybody with 2? Let me see the hands of those of you who got 1. Okay. And the rest of you, you're just losers? What? Okay. Here's the deal. The first time I saw that exercise happen was with a friend of mine who was a speaker at Launchpad Job Club way back in the early days when we were on Burnett Road, and it was during the dot-com bust. So those of you who were not here at that point, we had somewhere around 38,000 technical people who were unemployed in Austin, Texas. It was horrible. We had the boom where you could get a job like that. You could get multiple job offers in one day, in 1 week. And then all of a sudden, the bust happened, and there was nothing. And little dot-coms were going out of business like crazy. And there was nothing. And then later that year, I mean, the bust started, and then all of a sudden we had 911. And everything that was on the table slid off the table, and no companies were doing anything. Nobody knew if we were going to war or whatever, and everything just stopped. And that was the first year that Launchpad started, 2001. And so we had this speaker, and she did that very same exercise. And she said, you know, I've done this exercise with executives, I've done it with all kinds of people. And she said, I have never had a group that gave up as quickly as the Launchpad Job Club people. And I said, you know, I think it's because they're unemployed and they're tired of this. And they're kind of all beat down. And she said it's just kind of astounding that always before people stayed at it and tried to figure out, you know, how do I do this and how can I be more persuasive. The trick is that these people were not supposed to give out the paper clips except to the 5th person that asked them. So every 5th person, that's why, I don't know who you were, the very first person that talked to Ken got discouraged and went away, talked to somebody else, and then eventually came back, and this time he got a paperclip, and it's like, what did I do this time that I didn't do last time, you know? So, and the reason that has an application, obviously, to job hunting is that the job search process is practically that unpredictable and that's subjective. You know, sometimes you are the best qualified, you did everything right, and you didn't get the job, and somebody that wasn't as qualified got the job, and it's like, what? It's so unpredictable. I read a little case study one time in a book for employers on how employers hire, and it was written by Robert Half, and he said that he was consulting with a job seeker. This was an engineer who had 0 personality, 0. And Robert Half would work with him and say, try to say this. Let me just write down some points. You know, when you get into an interview, these are sales points on what you have to offer. Try to say this. The guy was terrible. Couldn't do it with conviction. And finally, you know, I mean, Robert Half didn't want to like write a script for him, but he said, listen, I think I've helped you all I can help you. I don't want to keep taking your money. You've got a great resume. You've got really good skills. So keep after it. Keep after it, and eventually you're going to get something. I know you're going to get something. And eventually he did. He looked for a job for a very long time, and eventually he got hired. And a year or two later, Robert Half had to do a consultant assignment with that company. And so he was talking to the CEO, and he said, "Isn't this where so-and-so went to work?" And he said, "Yeah, it is." And he said, "How's he working out?" And he said, "You know, he's a great engineer. He's working out really well." And he said, and Robert Half said, I was kind of surprised when I heard he'd been hired here." And he said, "Well, I got to tell you, I was kind of surprised when we hired him." But he said, the way that worked was, he said, we had been looking for somebody to be in that position for a very long time, and nobody was right. People were overqualified, they were underqualified, they didn't have the right degree, there's all sorts of things wrong. And we'd been looking and looking and looking for somebody to fill that position. And I finally woke up one morning and I said to my wife, "I'm so sick of that position. The next guy that walks in that wants it, I'm giving it to him." It was arbitrary. It was just like this. The fifth guy that asks for a paperclip, I'm giving it to him. And that is kind of how the job search process works. That if you keep after it, you can't give up. You can't give up. And even when it doesn't seem to make any sense, I tell you all the time that you've crossed into a parallel universe that is illogical. Sometimes our brightest people, our smartest people, our folks with the best qualifications are the ones that are looking for the longest. And it's like, it's counterintuitive. Why aren't these talented people working? It messes with your mind. And there's lots about the interview process that is confounding, that will mess with your mind when you know you're the best qualified person. Why aren't you getting that job? In my interview classes that I teach, I tell you that employers have a very specific list of things they're looking for, qualities that they're looking for, and they design questions that support those attributes that they want. I tell you about 4, and then I'm going to tell you a real life story that is the basis of this program, where this person was looking for 2 more things. So it's like the companies are looking for these characteristics, these qualities, these skills. What are the questions we can ask that will try to uncover their talents and qualifications within those areas. So the 4 that I always talk about are, number 1, can you do the job? So they'll ask you job-specific questions. Go to the board and write some code. Design a 5-minute training program so we can see if you what kind of a trainer you are. What would be the command that you would use if you were trying to do this? What's the difference between this and that? So they want to know, do you have the skill? I used to have an employer who was in the construction trades, and he said, I only ask one question of my painters, and it's, how do you paint a door? And based on the way they answer that question, I know if I want to work with them or not. I had another employer who said he asked the same first question of every candidate. And it doesn't matter if they're applying for a janitor position or a C-level job. He asks the same first question. If the answer is correct, the interview continues. If the answer is incorrect, they're done. And the question is, who's our major competitor? And how does our product or service compare with theirs? And so sometimes employers will have these key questions that they feel are extremely revealing. So can you do the job? So they ask you questions like that. Another category is, are you manageable? This is something that I never even thought of until a few years ago, when one of our board members, who was on the interview panel of our mock interviews, he introduced me to the concept of manageability, and I realized that I don't have it. And so it explained completely why, even though I've had the same job for a very long time, I've stayed in trouble almost the whole time. I hang by a thread, always. And it's because I'm not manageable. I don't like rules. And one of my coworkers said to me that I'm passive aggressive, and if there's a rule that they have that I don't think is a good rule, that I will try my darndest to figure out a way to not follow that rule. And so, anyway, are you manageable? So sometimes if people have owned their own business, they're so used to being in charge, they're not manageable, or they're considered to have manageability issues. Or if you've been fired a number of times. So how are they going to determine if somebody is manageable? Well, they ask questions like, tell me about a policy or procedure that you had to follow in your last job that you didn't agree with. Tell me about a time that you disagreed with your boss. That sort of thing. Tell me about a time when you were faced with an ethical dilemma. How'd you handle that? So are you manageable? Do you follow the rules that we have laid out here? A third thing is, do you really want the job? And sometimes you don't really want the job, but you're so desperate you have to get a job. You need a paycheck. But they want to know, do you really want this job? Are you going to stay? Or as soon as we train you, are you going to leave and go somewhere else? And so they'll ask you, what was it about this job that attracted you to it in the first place? Or what did you like best about your last job? What did you like least? What do you think is going to be the most fun thing that you do in this job? What do you think you're going to like least about this job? What would be your dream job? If you could do anything in that you wanted to do, what would that be? What would be your dream job? Where do you see yourself in 3 years if we hire you in this position? So all of those sort of say, do you really want to be here? And then the last thing is, do we like you? Do we want to work with you? And it's very difficult to determine that. I've seen many times when the best qualified person was not the one who got the job. It was the one that they liked. The fact that you get the interview pretty much means that you've got the skills. You've got the skills, you've got the qualifications, you passed the screening interview, you've got everything that was listed on the job description, at least the minimum qualifications. And so everybody that gets the interview is kind of in the same boat. So what's going to distinguish you from the person who gets the job? A lot of it depends on what they're looking for. Are they looking for somebody who's a real take-charge individual? Some of you remember a few years back when we were in our Promised Land location, we interviewed with, we set up an interview with Hoover's. Now, is that where you worked for Dun & Bradstreet? You worked at Hoover's? So Hoover's had been trying to find a very specific kind of person. And it was a sale. It was their like lead generation, their first line salesperson that sort of qualified customers, I guess. I can't remember what they called it exactly, but they had. I heard them advertising for this position on the radio. They had career fairs at the workforce office. They'd gone through. They had gone through all kinds of staffing companies to try to find people for this job. It's a very difficult job for them to fill. And I said, well, if you want, we could get our very best people, the people that we feel are the most qualified for this job, and we'll have them create a 90-second sort of elevator speech where they try to sell themselves for this particular position. And if you like what they say in the 90 seconds, then you can schedule a longer interview. And so they were very intrigued by that. They liked that. And we had a lot of good salespeople. And they explained clearly to me what this person was going to be. It was not going to be an account manager where you work with the same account and try to build sales over the long haul. This was a kind of a down and dirty thing where you talk to people, you ask them questions, you try to figure out. Hoover supplies information on different companies, and so it's like, how do you find out information about your competitors? How do you do that today? Would it be helpful if you could get a detailed breakdown of all of this different data about your competition? Would that be helpful to you? That's the kind of service we can provide. And so you're asking questions, you're qualifying them, you're laying out, this is what we can do. You're getting them all excited about the service that you can deliver, and then you move on. So you're a hunter. You're not a farmer. You're a hunter, and so that was sort of the attitude that they were looking for, and they never used those terms, hunter farmer, but they had said this is not an account manager that's going to nurture and build relationships. Some of you are the kind of account manager and you're all about the relationship piece. They didn't want the relationship piece. They wanted the aggressive person that was going to get these contracts started. And so anyway, so we practiced our people. We spent a lot of time on this, and we made it very clear. And then the Hoover's people came. They made a little talk about this is what we're looking for, and this was a cool little experiment for us. And I sat in on all of the 90-second presentations. And the first question that they seem to ask everybody is, would you define yourself as a hunter or a farmer? And if anybody said, well, I guess I would say I'm a farmer, or if they said the R word, relationship, done, gone. They weren't interested. They didn't want that. They didn't want anybody that wanted to build a relationship and build sales through that end. It was all front end stuff. And so they ended up, there were several of our people that got longer interviews. In fact, one of our people, and the second interview was we're putting you on the phone and we're going to see how you do. It was a can you do the job exercise. And one of my people got 3 interviews with them, and they never did hire any of our people. So they said, about a month later, they said, we loved that. We got the best people out of you. They didn't hire any of our people, though. And she said, we'd like you to do that again. Get your people together and do that again. I don't think so. So we didn't do it. But at any rate, that was the key question of, can you do this job? So it was laid out that way. And so the article that I found that made me ditch LinkedIn and go with this was an article about interview questions that identify somebody as a superstar. Not just somebody that can come in and do the job, but somebody that is a superstar that will do that job better than anybody else. And they talk about a man named, I would assume that he pronounces his name Tejun Kang, who is the founder of an IT service firm. And he was looking for superstars, and he says, I don't just want to compete. I want to have a staff of people that are the absolute stellar best folks in the business. And he said, I want to win the Super Bowl of my industry. That's the way I look at it. I don't want anybody mediocre. I want everybody to be a high achiever. And so he starts every interview with a few basics. And so he wants to hire people who have a great deal of personal drive. Well, we've just shown through our little exercise here that a lot of folks, you say, here's your goal. I want you to carry that ball over the goal line. A lot of people are, that's not my thing. I'm not interested in that. And almost all of our jobs are goal-driven. We have a matrix. We have things we have to do. I hate goal-driven stuff, but almost everybody, you got to reach those goals. Your goal was getting those paper clips. Most of you didn't even do it. I think Stevie probably knew the trick, but that's okay. Whether she did or not, doesn't matter. She got the 3. She's the big winner. She's a superstar. Rest of you sat here, didn't even try. I don't know. You got no drive. That's all I can say. All right. So this guy says he wants to hire people that have hunger and drive. So he asked them about how do you determine your goals? Personal goals. Tell me about a personal goal. Tell me about a personal goal and a professional goal. What are you doing to reach those goals? Have those goals changed when you were young? Did you have different goals? What happened to them? Did you abandon those goals? Did you give up on them? Were they too hard? What? What are the goals that are different now than you had then? How do you? What motivates you to work towards your goals? So people want to hire folks that are goal-driven and that will take steps. Well, your goal right now is getting a job. So do you work on that every day? Do you have a list? Do you have an itinerary? Do you have action items that you're trying to do that? And then when you get a job, do you just say, whew, thank goodness, now I got a paycheck coming in. I'm taking a break. I'm exhausted from looking for this job. Okay. So what? You gotta keep climbing that mountain. It's the whole Sisyphus thing, isn't it? All right. He wants competitive people. And so he says, tell me about the last time you competed in anything. Some of you are going to be able to talk about the paperclip challenge, right? Tell me about the last time you competed in anything. And did you win or did you lose? What did you like best about winning? What didn't you like about losing? How'd you feel when you lost? What'd you do? What do you do next? You go to the bar? That's my approach. Okay. You know, does losing make you want to try harder the next time, or does losing make you want to give up and go a different direction? It's all stuff about how do you operate, what motivates you. Most of us don't have any of those qualities. We're not in sales. We can't deal with rejection. We don't do that very well. We're not professional athletes. We don't keep getting up when we're beaten. We're not like that. Most of us are not like that. We say, okay, well, I'll do something else. I'll give up now. That's not for me. I'm not good at that. Just marriage. How many of you have been married? Like 5 times. You know? How many of you after that one divorce said, I'm done. I'm not good at it. I'm not good at relationships. I'm not going back out there. Quitter. Okay. So here's what this guy would do. So after he's found out, are you competitive? Do you have drive? Do you plug on? Then he would say, you know, it sounds as though you've got the right degree, the right background, the right skills. But in our company, you know, everybody has those things. Everybody's got the right skill set or they wouldn't be here. That's just a given. The problem is, I don't see that extra something in you that all of our people have. And then he says, I'm sorry, I just don't think this is the right fit for you. 75% of the people, actually more than that, this says 9 out of 10, say, well, I appreciate your time and thank you for telling me that, and good luck finding the right candidate. And they leave. They walk out. He just told them, you're not right. You're not what we're looking for. I'm sorry, you're not what we're looking for. You're not the product that we're going to buy. And they walk out. That's not what he wants. What he wants you to say is, let me explain to you why I think I am the perfect candidate for this job. That's what he wants. And so he wants you not to give up. He wants you to sit there and make your case. Look him in the eye and make your case. You may not hire me, but I don't believe it's going to be because I'm not the right candidate. I've got all the qualifications, and I've got the drive, and I've got the competitive spirit, and I want this job. Let me explain to you why I feel I'm absolutely the best candidate for this job. That is also a way that you close the interview. When we teach how to close an interview, we teach a number of different closings. But one closing that tends to work really well is for you to say, I'm very excited about this opportunity. I think I've got all the qualifications you're looking for. Now that you know a little bit more about my background, do you have any concerns about my ability to do this job? And if somebody asks us in mock interview practice, do you have any concerns, we will absolutely dig up a concern, even if your presentation was perfect, because we want you to do the next step and overcome that concern. And one of the people that did that effectively was a technical writer. This was not in a mock interview, this was in a real interview. And she finished the interview and she said, do you have any concerns about my ability to do the job? And the guy said, you're obviously a great technical writer, but I don't really think you're the right person for this position. And she said, really? In what way do you feel I'm not the right person? And he said, I think we need somebody who knows our software. I'm afraid it's going to take too long for you to come up to speed on our software. And she said, well, I disagree. You've got a whole plant full of people who know your software. You don't have anybody who knows how to write. Every job I've ever had, I've had to learn a company's proprietary software. I learn it by doing the documentation. I work with the engineers, I work with the programmers, I write their documentation, and then I write the user manuals because I have just learned the software myself. And you get somebody who knows the software, they can hardly put themselves in the shoes of a learner because they assume too much. So that's why I am so good at what I do. You check my references. Every company I've ever worked for will tell you that. that I'm the best technical writer they ever had. I've written their best documentation, I've learned the software very quickly, and I've written the user manuals that users at all levels can use. And then you're going to want to hire me. And he did. But she fought back. She explained, let me explain. This is why you should hire me over somebody else. Don't give up. Don't give up so easily. And confidence is everything. Just ask Mike Tomlin. And if you don't know what that is, you have to come to my planning class. No, you have to come to my interview 1 class. Okay. Anybody here know who Mike Tomlin? Anybody who's not gone through my class know who Mike Tomlin is? Who is it? Oh. And you don't know who Mike Tomlin is? Anybody know who Mike Tomlin is? Who said that? Brett, you are just a fount of trivia. He is. He's the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, well, now I have to tell you the Mike Tomlin story. All right, so everybody who's gone through my interviewing 1 class knows this because that's my core story. So the way that I heard the Mike Tomlin story, and if any of you know better, you can correct me. The owner of the Steelers for a long time was a guy named Mr. Rooney. And years ago, 20 years ago or something, Mr. Rooney took a look at the stats, the data of the pro football players, and came up with a statistic. Let's say 65% of the players are African American. I don't know what it is. And at that time, there was one African American coach. Who can name him? Tony Dungy. And so Mr. Rooney said, you cannot tell me that there aren't more minorities who could coach a team. So he came up with the Rooney Rule. And the Rooney Rule says that if any of the pro teams, but originally it was just the Steelers, if we have an opening on our coaching staff, we have to interview a minority. We don't have to hire a minority, we have to interview a minority. And eventually the Rooney Rule was adopted by all the pro teams. And it wasn't long after the Rooney Rule was established that Chuck Noll, legendary coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, retired, and they had an opening for a head coach. They had 3 assistants that all wanted the job, all white, all talented. They knew the plays, they knew the players, everybody liked them. They'd done a good job. It was the natural, logical thing for one of those people to be rewarded with that head coach's position. Oh, but they had to interview a minority. They didn't even know a minority they could interview. They had to call Tony Dungy and say, can you suggest a minority that we could interview for this position? And it could be that Tony Dungy felt that this was a lost cause from the get-go, and so he suggested somebody that didn't stand a chance. But he said, well, I got this young guy who's a defensive coordinator. He's just 27, so he's probably not what you're looking for, but you could interview him if you want to. His name's Mike Tomlin. So here comes Mike Tomlin. Everybody knew he was not getting hired. Never been a head coach. Too young. You're not going to hand over the Pittsburgh Steelers to somebody 27 years old. It's not going to happen. But he went into that interview so confident, so prepared, made such a great presentation. He said, here's, let me just give you an analysis of how I view this team. Here's where you're strong, here's where you're weak. You got this guy in the wrong position. I'd work with your recruiters. We'd try to draft this guy from UCLA and this guy from Stanford. We'd try to change this approach. You're never going to get to the Super Bowl without a strong defense. I can make sure that happens. You got, this play's never worked for you. I'd scrap that completely. Within 1 month, here's where we'd be. Within 6 months, here's where we'd be. And he says, if you trust me with the team, you're not going to be sorry. I know I can take him to the bowl. And he got hired. He got hired. In the interview, he blew him away. Let me help you visualize how I intend to do this job. A lot of it starts right here. Go into an interview totally pumped and confident that you can do the job. See in your mind how you intend to do the job. Visualize yourself in that job and then explain to them, here's where I see myself doing this job. Here's what I can bring to the table. Here's how I can help you solve these problems. And don't back off until you've made sure you've made your case. Don't give up. Get that paperclip.